Things Green is brought to you in part by
Super Thrive, the original vitamin solution. 50 vitamins and nutrients. Vitamins for trees, plants, and lawns. More information at superthrive.com.
Southland Sod Farms, creators of genuine marathon sod. Pre-grown tall fescue grass. More information at sod.com.
Dram Garden Products, makers of watering tools since the 1940s. Committed to saving water with handheld tools, hoses, and water wands. More information at dram.com.
With continued support from Cole Tomato Cages, planting, growing, and harvesting. More information at colemetals.com. And by the Radisson Hotel Whittier, with newly renovated rooms and an on-site bistro restaurant. More information at radisson.com. And by the State Farm Youth Advisory Board, supporting school-based, youth-led service learning projects.
Got to tell you something here. I'm really excited because we're at the Landscape Industry Show, and here you're going to find the movers and the shakers of a fascinating industry. One that I try to give you an insight with by all the little things that we do and the people that we talk. And speaking of talking, we got a little tailgate party going on over here, and what better way than to do it in front of a big old Ram truck? And we have our tailgate that's almost down. All right, that's a side gate. We're having a side gate party over here, and these are the guys that actually are behind making this particular trade really move, and the things that you may be curious about. So we're going to give you an insight today like you've never seen before, because trade shows are designed for everybody that are in that particular trade, i.e. landscape trade. So you at home, you may not be a landscaper. You're a homeowner and you're not invited to come. Don't take it personally, because these guys are here and they bring the things that they learn here to you. And that's what we want to do over here. So before we get started over here, guys, and hopefully you don't all have adult beverages and this stays to be a real calm thing over here. Who do we have?
My name is Joe Cuberos. I'm the commercial fleet manager with Chrysler Dodge Jeep of Ontario.
And I'm John Dominici with Southland Sod Farms.
David Horobin with H-Forms, a landscape wall building system.
And he talks funny, by the way. Did you notice that?
Hi, I'm Steve Jacobs with Nature Designs Landscaping. We're a custom residential design, build, and maintenance company.
And I'm William Sweet, and I'm also with Jeep Chrysler Dodge.
All right, well, there you go. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today here, guys. I really appreciate that. Okay, before we even get started, we have a couple of landscapers. We have people who are working with landscapers. You guys work with landscapers too, because you're all the time. And of course, John, you're actually in the trenches with these guys sometime. All right, I think the first thing that comes onto everybody's mind is when I open up a rag publication, I find out that somebody could have their lawn mowed for $6 a pop. What kind of guy are they going to get for something like that?
They're going to get an interesting guy. But most likely, they're not going to get a guy that has the knowledge to know what he's doing, to have the insurance, to be licensed, things that are really important to you as a homeowner. And what you're looking for is somebody who knows what they're doing, is going to make your yard look better, not worse.
Now, does that mean that if you come driving up in a beaten up old pickup truck, does that mean that they're not licensed?
Absolutely not. They can own an old vehicle and still be licensed. The thing is you as a consumer need to check. You need to not just hear that they have a license, but there is a website with the state license board. It's very easy to go on. It's cslb.ca.gov, and you can just type in the license number that the person gives you, and you can verify that they're licensed.
Now, being that you're in the business of selling these bad boys, do you come across guys who are not licensed that are buying these things?
I do. You run across all different walks of life, people that are licensed, people that have huge companies, people that have small companies. But for the most part, if that guy is really knows what he's talking about, he's the guy that's going to come in and buy a truck like this that has everything he needs to do the job and do the job well.
And John, you see these people out in the field all the time as well. What is your impression when you come driving up to a homeowner, they put out this beautiful sod lawn, and it doesn't look like they're representing the industry very well?
Well, I go off the quality of the job site. So if it's looking good, usually the guy has his stuff together, and if it's looking bad, usually he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. It's very simple and very easy. Very picture. You look at the picture. That's all. It tells you 100 words right there.
Picture tells 100 words. Oh yeah, I could definitely see that. And then David, I would imagine that you actually get to work with the consumer as well as both of them at the same time. Do you notice a difference in the quality of the contractors that do come through with the things that you do?
Well, there are high-end contractors and low-end contractors, so that they go all sorts of different qualities. And sometimes we find that homeowners, they do it-yourself projects. They design their own projects with the system. They build them, and some of them are higher quality than some of the lower-end contractors. So we span the whole spectrum in terms of quality.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to change the subject over here. Let's talk drought. All right, there's a little thing. All right, 14 western states claim to have a drought, and even though that the El Nino has been here, is expected to continue. They said that we need 2, if not 3 years of really wet weather to make this work. Has the drought affected your business at all?
I'll tell you, from the landscaping side, you've seen less people that are directly involved with grass, but what we've seen is an uptick in concrete contractors. Absolutely, a lot of people are replacing their green stuff with gray stuff.
Wow.
Absolutely, yeah. We've even did it. We've actually done that at our dealership as well. So you're seeing a lot of people pulling out some of the living things and putting in some other ideas that revolve around concrete. Different. I'm sure Dave could speak more of that. He's involved in the concrete business himself. But yeah, we've seen an uptick in concrete contractors because people are pulling away from that. Concrete, you only have to water once.
and that's the initial time.
That's it. Yeah, when you set it, after that, it's good. So
yeah. Concrete doesn't grow, but I'll tell you, it doesn't feel that good when you have when you're barefoot walking through it, does it?
No, well, it doesn't feel like live grass. Nothing feels like live grass. And yeah, the drought has affected the sod business, but we feel as a sod company that with the rain we're getting this year, the drought will somewhat they'll let off some of the restrictions, hopefully. And we think when people do have a choice of putting in a lawn or not putting in a lawn, we just think genuinely people like lawns. I mean, people like that feel. They like their kids playing on it. They like having a place to have a picnic on their front yard. Grass is a good thing and people like it.
Now, if you haven't had the chance to do this or not, I want you to go to thingsgreen.com or to klcs.org, and you'll find a link where we actually did a couple of shows, one in particular that dealt with the drought and all the things that you can do with the drought, and if you want to conserve water without having to tear out a whole bunch of landscape and to do things that you're going to have to put back later on or whatever the case may be. So kind of check that out as well. And what's really interesting, what Joe had mentioned, you come across stuff too, the fact that people are putting up these kind of things so they can, wall systems, for instance, so that they can tier their landscape to do different types of looks as well.
Yeah, very much so. And with the drought going on where we are, certainly being from the Napa Valley, we've got a real consideration of water there because of the vineyards. So we have very little water, and what we're finding is that people are coming in and replacing with sustainable landscaping, and then they take advantage of that and they do walls at the same time. So little patio walls, sound walls, retaining walls, all that kind of stuff, because they'll add it in with the package of putting in the sustainable landscaping.
Now with your company, I know you guys do a lot of installation as well.
Absolutely. Most of the work we do is design and install.
Okay, so has the drought affected your business at all?
Absolutely. We've been through a couple of droughts, and what we find is there's just this kind of wave of back and forth between what do I plant, how do I design my yard, and we found the most critical thing is water management. That if people plan ahead, put in a design that works for them and also uses less water, it can be very effective in reducing the overall water usage. So back to the maintenance part of it, it's the guy that's programming the controller is the one who's ultimately in charge of how much water you're going to use. And rarely does that person have the training or knowledge to do it properly. And so, appeal to the consumer to do their homework and make sure they have a certified water manager, somebody that has the experience and the knowledge of what to do, how to program that clock and not waste water. You can actually hurt plants by watering them too much, and we find that happens very often.
Yeah, I think most of the time when people call me on the radio, they water their lawns or they water their plants way too much. And the best way to really gauge whether or not your lawn or your planter beds or your garden are being watered too much is I like to do what I call the sponge test. If you take a sponge and you soak it, saturate it, and then squeeze it out like this, and then open it up, however that feels, that's the soil content moisture that you should have underneath. But if you're squeezing it and there's water coming out, then you've got it's water. It's too much water. How are the retrofits coming along? You guys doing a lot of those?
Oh yeah, quite a few. We where people will either reduce the size of their lawn, eliminate it, and then replace it with drought-tolerant plant material. And people don't realize how beautiful your yard can be with water, drought-tolerant plants, natives. If it's designed properly, you put the right plant in the right place. It's really critical that you know what you're doing.
And I think that's actually a mouthful right there. It has to be designed properly. You can include all these different elements. You don't have to have a concrete forest, but you can, all these. You can have these wonderful elements in there, still have a neat landscape, and conserve water. I live in a 1/4 acre, and I was able this year to cut my watering down. Was it 1/3 or 2/3? I think it was 1/3.
I saw that episode, by the way, where
Oh,
you did
did
the
you?
drought tolerant plants, and that's exactly what we did at our facility. Was that we tore out a lot of our. We found there was a lot of unnecessary plant material. We did tear some of that out. We didn't go totally concrete. We just did concrete with plant accents, is what we did, and we cut our water usage, and that was our goal, to cut our water usage by 50%, and we actually met that goal, and we were able to do that by pulling out the things that 10 years ago nobody would consider. Nobody thought about whether this was a drought-tolerant plant or whether it required a lot of water, whatever it was. Yeah. And just recently we made that decision as a dealership not only to tear out our lights and go with solar power lights rather than some of the other more I guess higher draw light materials, but we went with the solar lights, and then we tore out the unnecessary plants, went with some combination of concrete and with drought-tolerant plants. And it made for a beautiful mix.
So, what's really kind of interesting, I wanted to you're kind of sparking something over here. There's this word that's, there's actually a couple of words that are being thrown around in the industry, and one of them is sustainability. You have any idea what sustainability is?
I have an idea.
Okay, what would you consider as sustainability?
Something that's going to exist for a longer amount of time on less resources.
Yeah, what's interesting about that? I went and I interviewed a whole bunch of teenagers, and I had them a part of a speech that I gave, and I just came across this just yesterday, and these teenagers were literally from 13 up to 19, maybe even 20 years old. Not one of them did they answer anywhere closely related to that. They had no idea. So if I was to say, look at, were things green, right?
That's a USC education at work right there.
I learned that in junior college before I got to USC.
Well, that money was well spent. he learned the tailgate party from USC.
Absolutely.
Still learning. You never.
But the interesting part about it is that if you were to tell and bring it up to any of your clients, what does green mean to them? Do you think they would know?
They might have an idea because it's such a usable word these days. But I think when it comes down to the real truth about what it means for the planet, I think there's a lot of education that's needed.
Yeah, and I think so too. I think, those were kind of like buzzwords 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It's like, okay, what does that mean? Today, now it's like, okay, I got to do that, but I'm still not 100% sure what that means. Yeah. So, green to some people, just putting in a lawn, right?
Well, I think hearing everybody talk, it really comes down to whatever plant you put in, whether it be a native plant, a lawn, they don't waste the water. It's the people that are managing the water, managing the system, adjusting the time schedules, adjusting it to the weather. Those are the people that are either wasting water or conserving water. You could put in a desert landscape, and if people water it, that's wasting water. If you put in a lawn and water it properly and don't shut it down when it rains and use all the technology that's available to you to water it properly, then you're not wasting water, and you're having a nice lush lawn, a nice lush landscape. And we joke at the farm, plants don't waste water, lawns don't waste water, people waste water, bottom line.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to digress a little bit, but I want to include what you're talking about. Remind me, one time you showed me a bill off of water, a water bill.
Yes.
A water bill. What was that all about? Do you remember?
Well, if everybody, if you would just look at your water bills, first of all, no two water bills are the same. It depends on where your water district is, who your water server is. And bottom line comes down to is water's cheap. Water per unit is cheap. And if you look at your bill, a lot of your bill is surcharges before you even turn on your water. You go on vacation for a month, don't use an ounce of water at your house, and you're still going to get charged. So people have a misconception that if they get rid of their lawn, they get rid of their areas and put in concrete and gravel, that they're not going to have as big of a water bill. They're not going to have a water bill. They're going to have a less water bill. But bottom line, they're still going to have a good-sized water bill.
Well, John, and there are different water-resistant sods. I got water. What is it? What's the word? Drought tolerant. So yeah, drought-tolerant sods as well. Right. Yeah.
And we have drought-tolerant varieties. But bottom line comes down, you could put in a drought-tolerant, and you could put in a non-drought-tolerant turf. And if it comes down to the consumer, if he turns on his sprinklers, I've gone out to houses 3 months after they've been installed. When you're installing a new lawn, you have to water it 2 to 3 times a day. And when I've gone out 2 months, 3 months after the lawn's been installed,
and they're still watering.
And they're still watering 2 to 3 times a day. Yeah. So once again, it's not the lawn a lot of times, it's not the plant you put in, it's the person behind managing and taking care of things.
Okay, so that parlays me into this next question, customer service. So you have somebody who's constantly watering the lawn. They should have eased up on it. They put their wall in crooked. They over fertilize because they think that you were too expensive in the first place. They don't like the idea that they really should bring their vehicle in to get it serviced once in a while, and it's all of your faults because of it. Right? It's all of your fault. So
absolutely.
So as a professional, what are some of the challenges you run across that really irk you, that it's outside of your territory, but the homeowner does anyways, and you get blamed for it?
Oh, well, I mean, how much time do we have? That's the question.
Until my arm falls off from holding this thing.
We spend most of our time educating our clients, and that's what needs to happen. It's just like when a client moves into a home. Is there a thing on the wall that tells them, hey, this is how much you're supposed to water, this is how long? This information is not readily available. So I can't blame the homeowner. I'm there just to help them understand. And when they have balled up hedges and yellow lawns and over irrigated planter areas, what I have to do is just walk them through the property and explain. Sometimes, you mentioned before, you're walking along their grass and they want to know why their water bill is so high, and as you're walking along the turf you hear this squish, 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 squish. Sometimes the obvious is not obvious to them.
No, that's the lawn's problem. Yeah. Of course. It's always the lawn's problem.
The mushrooms aren't always a clue. The mushrooms aren't always pointing out.
The snails. I have clients that have snail problems, and almost 99% of the time, it's because they're overwatering. So, I've learned, you got to be an educator. You got to give your client the information they need to make the right choices.
That's a really good point, because when you buy a pre-owned vehicle, most times, more often than not, when you buy a vehicle, you have an owner's manual. That owner's manual will tell you in there when it's time to get your oil changed, when it's time to service your vehicle. But I've moved into a new house that was new to me, maybe not a new house, but I didn't have an owner's manual for that long. I didn't know, there was an automatic timer set up, but I didn't know, there was no instructions on that automatic timer that said this was fescue or Bermuda grass, and it should be watered X amount of time per day or per week based on the conditions. So that's a very good point.
Isn't that responsibility?
And that's what Google's for. That's what Google's for now. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yahoo over Google.
No, but that's a very good point, because you don't have that, and there are so many different types of grasses, right? And depending on season and climate and where you're located, and I've lived in everywhere from Hawaii to Northern California to Southern California. You don't have to water grass the same amount of time in each location, but we don't always educate ourselves to that. So.
Unfortunately, homeowners, the first question out of their mouth usually is, how many minutes do I water? There's no answer to how many minutes you water your lawn. It changes weekly, depending on the type of sprinklers you have. There's just so many tangibles that the question, they want a simple answer of 12 minutes every other day. That's what they want. Yeah. I could tell them what they want to hear, or I could tell them that they need to educate themselves on how to adjust their sprinklers and the times to the lawn's needs.
So how does that become your fault, because they end up putting that wall crooked, or they bought the wrong pieces?
Well, it doesn't matter what happens, it's our fault, of course. And you can get the most skilled contractors. I think the thing that we're up against more is tradition, is that people are so used to building walls out of concrete blocks, and we're coming in and saying, here's a new way of doing it, here's an easier way of doing it, a less expensive way of doing it, and it really works. And by the way, what you produce as an end result can be much more beautiful than a concrete block system. So it's tradition really that we're fighting, and especially with the older masons and the older contractors who've been doing it this way for decades. Their kids come in and say, Dad, let's do it this way. I don't want to have my back broken the way yours is broken at your age. I want to be fresh and fit at 60. And if I use this system, I'm going to be able to make more money, I'm going to be able to do it quicker, and I'm going to be able to produce better results in many ways.
Which is interesting, because the landscape industry as a whole in horticulture sometimes has a problem latching on to the new fandangled things that we see. I mean, you have a vehicle that has something in the back, and you don't even have to turn your neck any longer, so you can back up your truck, for instance.
Well, I have no problem changing to a new car, ever.
Let's make sure I get you a car.
We got a power deal going on over here. Look at that. Don't forget the host of the show. Okay. But the bottom line on something like this is that people still call up. So when they call up and they're irate, what's the first step to calming them down? Would you
ask them their problem and just sympathize with them, or empathize?
Empathize
more
than anything.
Yeah.
Because, the fact is known, it's their fault because they didn't change the oil.
It is, but they don't want to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I really thought that red light was going to get brighter. Or,
And it will eventually, until it goes out.
Yeah, until it goes out. Yeah, and so is the car.
You're right.
Yeah, you do that all at the same time.
Well, Nick, one of the things we say homeowners, right, is you wouldn't believe how many times I've been asked that question, because it makes them feel comfortable about the fact they're not the only one in the world that came across that problem. So it's comfort, and as long as you can, that's part of customer service. If you can make your customers feel comfortable about what they're doing, and they're not the only person in the world, it changes the whole human psyche about what they're doing.
Customer service and his bottom line on that, right?
Yeah, David, you're exactly right. To me, what I've learned with my clients is people just want to be heard. And they don't necessarily have to be right or wrong. They just want to be known. They want you to listen to them, acknowledge where they're coming from, and then at that time, once they feel heard, then you can come up with a solution.
Okay, very good. I want to quickly, in the few moments that we have left, and it kind of pertains more to what you do more than anything, but maybe you guys can all chime in. There's a lot of laws that are being passed today on a couple of different things. Number one, environmentalism / using chemicals in the yard and garden, whether that is a good or bad thing. And on top of that, people are using, there's a lot of laws being passed on the equipment that you're being used, like backpack blowers.
Yes, as you've probably heard, that there's been a lot of noise in the last few years. Sorry about the pun, but about blower bans. And people kind of get on the bandwagon because of the idea, well, that community has a ban now on blowers, and these are leaf blowers that help individuals clean up areas quickly. What people don't understand sometimes is that if you ban the blower, now you got to get out the broom, which is fine and it's good exercise, but it takes a lot longer, so that there is going to be a cost to that. The other thing that people don't realize is that most bans on blowers are because of the noise. And the deal is there are other pieces of equipment that are used in garden maintenance, like line trimmers, that are actually much louder than blowers.
And the blowers themselves, yeah.
Really for people to think things through before they go and vote.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the program today. Greatly appreciate it. This was my first tailgate meeting, so I have no idea what I was doing and all that. Thanks for making me feel comfortable. And let's not forget that whenever we're out in the yard and garden, green side up. So, that's what we're going to do. Yeah, good rule. So thanks like that for guys.
Things Green is brought to you in part by
Super Thrive, the original vitamin solution. 50 vitamins and nutrients. Vitamins for trees, plants, and lawns. More information at superthrive.com.
Southland Sod Farms, creators of genuine marathon sod. Pre-grown tall fescue grass. More information at sod.com.
Dram Garden Products, makers of watering tools since the 1940s. Committed to saving water with handheld tools, hoses, and water wands. More information at dram.com.
With continued support from Cole Tomato Cages, planting, growing, and harvesting. More information at colemetals.com. And by the Radisson Hotel Whittier, with newly renovated rooms and an on-site bistro restaurant. More information at radisson.com. And by the State Farm Youth Advisory Board, supporting school-based, youth-led service learning projects.